morning. Joining us now via Skype to talk about the safety of women in India is actress Richa Chadha. Richa, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
We've just been talking about that horrific case in India, the most recent case that's being reported about the woman who was raped and then murdered. 4 men were arrested and then the accused were killed by police. And there's been a lot of controversy over this in India. Some are calling it justice. Others in India are saying that it's a travesty of justice. What is your view?
Well, I tend to agree with the Chief Justice Bobde, who said that this cannot be the path that we choose. There is a place for every institution in a democracy, and the police cannot be performing the role of the judiciary. In a sense, that absolves the police of their responsibility in a case like this. When the woman's family first went to complain, they were directed from one police station to another over jurisdiction about which area precisely this crime happened in. And then the first statement to come out the next day from an official said that why didn't the victim first call the police, and why did she call her sister? And then after a few days you hear that the 4 accused made a run for it and they were encountered.
Does it also point to the fact that there's also a great deal of frustration in India over the way in which the justice system handles cases like this, including the manner in which the police have handled this?
There is frustration from both the police and from the judiciary, which is why you see this support for this quick dispensation of justice among people. There was a section of people who said that this was the best thing that could have been done, but I feel like that's a very slippery slope. The minute you ignore the rule of law in favor of popular sentiment, you're bound to go wrong. If we do not follow due process, it's going to be very dangerous.
We have seen outrage on the streets of India over this most recent gang rape. You have said that the country is not safe for women. What needs to change?
The first thing that needs to change, of course, is how we raise the children that we have in our country. India is one of those countries where violence against the girl starts in the womb. We have a high rate of female feticide, and from then on, girls drop out of school. Often parents are afraid that they will be molested, assaulted, raped on the way in the remote areas, and so on and so forth. First, it comes to conditioning, and then hopefully people will understand the importance of following the legal course of things. There needs to be greater amount of sex education. I read somewhere recently that rape is sexualized aggression, but it is aggression, and it is directed pointedly towards the female.
There's been a lot of coverage over these protests in India. We've been covering it as well. There was one very anxious young girl who was at a recent protest. She was talking about her concerns. Let's listen to some of what she had to say.
Every girl is suffering from this. Every girl scares to go after night. Even after 9, every girl is like scared to go out, and every parents, they are thinking that it's a fault of a girl. She's wearing short dresses, and it's not that. The rapists who are doing this, their view is different. Their view is only, even if you wear sari, their view is to do rapists, and they will do rape.
Very strong words there, Richa. Give us your sense of the mindset among women and girls in India.
Well, there is a reason that women don't come forward to report crimes like these, to report gender crimes, sexual crimes, is because there is a popular culture of victim shaming. We often ask why the girl was out so late, what was she wearing, and this is the worst kind of gaslighting that can happen, because there are reports of, the last report I read was about a 9-month-old baby being raped by her own uncle. So are we going to question why that infant, what her choice of clothing was? No. We have to look at this as an objective issue. And we would be foolish to believe, the men in India would be foolish to believe that if women get raped on the streets, that it's not something that is going to affect them.
You were in a recent movie, you played a prosecutor. The movie was called Section 375, and as a prosecutor, you were trying to get justice for a rape victim. How did that role and your part in that movie inform you about the ongoing problems of rape in India?
Uh, well, I knew of the issue before the film. If you're kind of raised in India, there's no way you will escape that reality. On the road, using public transport, where you study, who you hang out with, it's something you deal with on a daily basis. So I don't think that the film added to my knowledge in any substantial way. However, it was a subversive attempt, and it looked at the clause for consent, the section for consent in the Indian Constitution, which after the horrific 2012 rape case, which is popularly called Nirbhaya here, uh, there was a few amendments to that, and the definition of rape was broadened. It's not like the laws are not in place, um, and fast-track courts, media pressure doesn't exist. It's just that nothing seems to change.
That case that you talk about in India in 2012, there were laws that were passed in the aftermath of that case. But have those laws acted as any kind of deterrent?
I mean, her rapists and murderers are still in jail. I believe they have put forward a mercy petition. One has taken his mercy petition back. One was a juvenile, so nothing happened. And there was another who gave an interview, who agreed to be interviewed for a documentary about the same issue. And in that, he proudly proclaims that it was in fact okay to act that way because that girl was out that late.
You've talked about the need for change, both in government and in society, in attitudes. That's the bigger challenge, isn't it? How do you accomplish that?
Well, the government is not something that exists in isolation. The government exists because we vote these people into power. Currently, the ruling regime has about a high percentage of people have been either accused or convicted of gender crimes, um, including a former union minister called MJ Akbar. There's an MLA called Kuldeep Sengar. There is a self-styled guru called Chinmayanand. And there's another guy on the run right now who's founded his own island called Swami Nityanand. So I'm angry.
And where do you see this go for yourself? What's next for you? Do you see yourself entering politics, or would you
No.
try to work from the outside to effect change?
I would like for our elected representatives to remember that they're elected representatives and do what needs to be done for the people without ordinary tax-paying citizens like me having to join politics. I don't think I'm cut out for it, but I wish that the voice of citizens in India was powerful enough to be heard by the people who, in fact, we have elected, whose salaries come out of our taxes. And just that would be good. Just enough media pressure on this issue. You know, this is something that affects us on an everyday basis. Everything how we choose to dress when we go out on the road to work, to who's around you, what mode of transport you would take. Everything gets affected by this. And perhaps you're only aware of the case that happened in Hyderabad recently, but where I am right now, 3 days ago, a woman was set on fire by her own rapist. because she refused to take the rape case down, and she succumbed and she died to 90% burns just day before. So this is not something that changes. Those 4 rape accused were out on bail. The police did not notify the victim that they were in fact out on bail, and she was headed to the court. And this has happened in a city called Unnao, which over the last 5 years or last couple of years has seen 2 rapes uh, that have shocked the nation.
Richa Chadha, thanks so much for joining us.